If you recently found out that you have Splenic Authority, or if you're simply interested in learning more about this authority type, then this video is for you. Hi guys, my name is Veronica. I'm a mindset coach and human design guide with over 15 years experience helping women achieve their version of success. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the different authority types that exist in human design. In previous videos, we looked at emotional authority and sacral authority. If you have either of those two, then I will leave the videos linked for you in the description box below. But the next one up in the hierarchy of authorities is splenic. Now this one's particularly close to my heart because I have Splenic Authority. So unlike the other authorities where I can only share the kind of theoretical insights with you, with this one, I can try my best to also give you examples of how having Splenic Authority shows up in my life, and so that you can start noticing a little bit more how this type of authority might be showing up in your life as well. When we talk about authority in human design, what we're talking about is the most aligned way for you to make decisions. Decisions that feel true to you and who you are and what you truly desire, instead of being based on conditioning, external expectations, and pressures coming from other people. There are 7 different types of authority that you can have, and which authority you have will be dependent on which energy centers are defined or undefined in your chart. If you're interested in understanding what exactly about your chart gives you Splenic Authority, we first of all need to understand that someone who has Splenic Authority will never have their emotional or solar plexus defined, nor will they have their sacral defined. This means that by default, generators and manifesting generators will never have Splenic Authority, because in order to be a generator or a manifesting generator, you have to have a defined sacral. So criteria number 1, you don't have a defined sacral and you don't have a defined solar plexus. Criteria number 2 is that your spleen needs to be defined, so it needs to be coloured in, which of course then would eliminate the reflectors, because reflectors have none of their energy centres defined. This leaves only 2 energy types that can potentially have Splenic Authority. These are the projectors and the manifestors. In order to better understand how Splenic Authority works, we need to look at the role of the spleen as an energy centre. Now, the spleen is actually the oldest of the energy centres. The reason for that is because this particular energy center relates to your instinct and your intuition. It relates to your fears. It relates to survival. Knowing this can help us understand and become more aware of on where we're tapping into this internal authority as it pertains to making decisions in day-to-day life. What helped me personally understand this center and understand the role it plays in my authority a lot more was to think about the fact that back in the day, when we were cavemen and our sole intention every single day was to survive, we didn't necessarily need an emotional center. We didn't have the luxury to base our decisions on how we felt that day. At the time, we also didn't rely or couldn't rely on knowledge and logic in order to make decisions, because we didn't have much of it. And so all of our decisions were based on instincts, were based on survival, which is similar to the way that a lot of animals still operate today. They don't have to sit down and have a conversation about where they're going to go to avoid being hunted. They simply rely on their instincts. Through this lens, it becomes easier to understand how Splenic Authority might operate in us as people. So Splenic Authority is different to having a gut instinct. One thing that they have in common is that they both don't rely on logic. They both don't rely on knowledge. They both don't rely on having to make a pros and cons list. They rely on listening intuitively to what your body and your energy is telling you, instead of focusing on what their mind wants you to think. Where they differ is that a gut instinct, which comes from having sacral authority, can be described as having this physical reaction that either pulls you towards what you want or away from what you don't want. It's kind of a yes or no feeling of wanting something or not wanting it. And people with sacral authority who are heavily reliant on their gut will often have a gut feeling that something is right for them and something is wrong for them, and that feeling can stay with them over long periods of time. Now, this is one of the key ways that sacral authority differs from Splenic Authority, because Splenic Authority has to be quick, right? Again, if we think about animals, if we think about us trying to survive in the wild back in the day, we didn't have time to waste because many of our decisions would have been life or death. So Splenic Authority is quick. It comes and it goes and it's in the moment. It comes to you when you need it and is correct for you within that moment, within those specific circumstances. As circumstances change, so can your reaction to what needs to happen. So that means that Splenic Authority is very quick to come and go. And what might be a good decision for you 1 second might no longer be a good decision for you in the next if your circumstances have changed. When I first learned about this, I was like, okay, well, how on earth am I going to make any decisions? And how on earth can I rely upon the fact that those decisions are correct for me if I'm kind of getting these quick hits of intuition, but 1 minute they're right and the next they could be wrong? And the answer to that is practice. Really getting to understand how your Splenic Authority shows up, and number one, noticing when it does. For me, when I first discovered human design, I had no idea that I had another option in the way that I could make decisions that wasn't thinking things through, Googling and making pros and cons list. I was a pros and cons queen. So for me to first of all step away from that process, step away from that safety blanket of feeling like a good decision was a well thought through decision, that was a challenge in itself, right? Because we're taught from a very young age that in order to make good decisions, we have to think things through. We have to maybe take our time, get advice. When in reality, human design shows us that we are all built to make decisions in our unique and individual ways. So the first challenge with any type of authority, and particularly with Splenic Authority, is to step away from that belief that you have to take a long time to make a decision, that you have to do your research and think things through. Because Splenic Authority is so quick, that means that you also have to develop the muscle to trust your instincts, to trust that sometimes, even if you can't rationalize it, you know if something is good or bad. And I actually have a really good example that I want to share with you, but I will do that later on. So Splenic Authority is very quick. That means that we need to get better and better and better at recognizing it when it arrives, because otherwise we are not even noticing those hits of intuition that are there to guide us. The way these hits of intuition show up, I believe, will be different for everybody, right? Because no one can truly know what it feels like to be in your body, to be in your energy. And I say this all the time. What I can tell you and share with you is my experience, and it made sense to me once I started to learn more about this authority and my Splenic Authority. For me, it shows up as just a knowing. It's just an inner knowing, and it's not in one particular area of my body. It's not a pull, it's not a physical reaction per se. It's just this visceral knowing. Often I can't rationalize why it is so. Sometimes with time I can, and with hindsight I can, but in the moment I sometimes just get this feeling where I just know, even if I can't explain how or why. And when I started to develop my awareness around this, and I started to look back at the decisions that I made throughout my life, I could definitely point out the decisions that I made, listening to and grasping that intuition and those instincts when they came through, and just trusting that they were going to lead me somewhere I needed to be, even though at the time maybe I didn't know where that was or why. And not all of those decisions led me to a happy place, but again, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And so now looking back, I can recognize that even when they didn't, they led me to meet people, situations, and opportunities that I needed to experience. I needed to experience to grow, to evolve, to challenge myself, to change, to improve, to be kinder to myself. So for me, it shows up as this inner knowing. And in my experience, the more I trust it and the more I give it trust and say, okay, like, let me go with it, let's see where this takes me, and I kind of take that leap of faith, the more it pays off and the more I recognize it when it comes through when I'm trying to make a decision. Now, the perfect example for this happened recently, and we were on holiday in Italy. We went to Umbria, we were in Perugia, and we were walking back to our hotel room, and it was kind of after dinner, so it was late, but not incredibly late, but it was dark already. And we got quite close to the hotel, and we had to go down a set of stairs, and these stairs were quite dark. But at the top of those stairs, there were two men sitting down facing the opposite way, And instinctively, although I knew we had to walk down those steps to get to the hotel, I grabbed my husband and did a detour. I started walking in the wrong direction, which, you know, led to the hotel anyway, but it was a longer walk. And my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just know I don't want to walk down those steps." He was like, "Why?" They were just sitting there, minding their own business. What's the problem? You know, and I couldn't explain why I had such a reaction to going down those steps. The next day, we were walking back into town from the hotel room. It was morning, and we walked up those steps, and by the area where those two men had been sitting, there were syringes, and obviously they had been doing, you know, naughty things on those steps. So that for me was so interesting, and that for me was such a obvious example of how instinctively and intuitively I knew not to go down those steps in that moment. I couldn't explain why, and it was frustrating for my husband, and you know, we probably would have gone down those steps and nothing would have happened, but there was just something in me. It was instinctive, and again, it was quick, and I went with it. Maybe in the past, before I discovered human design and my authority, I may have even let my husband persuade me to go down those steps, especially because I couldn't verbalize what about that situation was giving me the ick. But because I've intentionally been practicing paying attention to my spleen, and it's funny because my husband, now he's familiar with human design because obviously of what I do and I talk about it all the time. Even he has got into the habit of saying, like, what's your spleen saying to you? Like, what's your instinct saying to you? And yeah, I'm intentionally practicing listening to it and trusting it. That's the most challenging part for me, is sometimes it comes and it's so quick and there's no rationale with it, because my brain was the rationale, that I can back away from the intuition because I need time to think it through. But the minute I do that is the minute that my instinct has come and gone. So the key really is to stay out of the mind as much as possible, and that takes practice. A great exercise, and I alluded to this earlier, is to start noticing the decisions you've already made. So when you look back at your life, what decisions did you make that were pivotal in your growth as a human being, and that you can connect to trusting that intuition? I definitely have a couple of examples throughout my life where I made life-changing decisions, and they were very much based on this inner knowing that I needed to do this. One of the biggest ones for me was going traveling in 2016. At the end of 2015, I was in a situation where I wanted to go travel, but I had loads of excuses as to why I couldn't just leave my life in the UK and go and explore the world. And yet I got to one day where I just knew that that was what I was meant to do. And I followed through with it, and I bought my one-way ticket to New Zealand without telling anyone. And that completely changed the trajectory of my life. Another time that I definitely can recall having this knowing was actually meeting my husband. And let me tell you, we met whilst we were traveling, and the environment that we met in was not one where you think you're gonna meet your soulmate or your future husband. We were all out there having fun, but I just had this knowing, and maybe on paper sometimes we don't even make sense, and yet we do make so much sense. And my intuition knew that before my brain even could accept it. So there are definitely big decisions that I can attribute to me trusting my intuition and trusting my instincts. Another one was leaving my job and pursuing my coaching business full time. So again, I would love to know, have you made any decisions that maybe didn't make sense, or logical sense at the time, but where you just knew that you had to follow through with it? If so, and if you're willing to share any examples, you know, leave them in the comments. I would love to know your stories. I hope that this brief introduction into Splenic Authority has given you a little bit more insight and a little bit more information as to what makes you someone with Splenic Authority, what it might feel like, how it might come up. I hope that sharing some of my experiences with it can help you maybe recognize some of your own experiences that you've had. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, I welcome them in the comment section below. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. If you stumbled across this video randomly and you haven't yet pulled up your human design chart, then there is a link in my description box where you can download yours for free from my website. If you're looking for any kind of support, I do offer human design readings. Again, you can find the booking link and all of the information down below in the description box. And of course, being a coach, I do also provide coaching services specifically for women. So if you're feeling called towards making a change, making yourself a priority, finding more, whether that is more fulfillment, more alignment, more balance, more inner peace, more progress, more success, more money, whatever it may be for you, then I do encourage you to book a free complimentary discovery call where we can have a chat and understand if I could support you in a coaching capacity to help you achieve your version of success. I look forward to seeing you here next week with the next video. Bye guys.